Welcome to the Marriage Steps podcast. We're developing a long-lasting, happy relationship as the status symbol to achieve. And following my 6 marriage steps is a path to help get you there. The 6 steps are establishing a covenant foundation, owning your brokenness, learning to share power, developing emotional attachment, cultivating sexual fireworks, and staying in love. The 6 steps are covered at my Total Marriage Refresh seminars in Denver and Dallas. I have those coming up this spring in both places. I'm your host, Dr. Wyatt Fisher, licensed psychologist and marriage counselor. For more marriage resources, go to my website, drwyattfisher.com, and follow me at facebook.com/Dr. Wyatt Fisher or on Instagram at Dr. Wyatt Fisher. Happy 2020. Hope you all survived the holidays. I got really sick, unfortunately, so I'm on the tail end of that. You may be able to tell with my voice. Probably doesn't sound as usual. So I hope you're making some New Year resolutions for your marriage. Maybe that's in your sex life. Maybe it's in your emotional life. Maybe it's in your parenting life. Maybe it's in your financial life. Whatever that is, but be sure to be focusing on how to get our marriage better. And on that note, today I'm going to talk about 2 ways to make your wife desire more sex. A lot of you listening may feel this a lot, that you wish your wife wanted sex more, or they were more open to sex, or they enjoyed sex more, and it might be somewhat of a mystery of why they don't. So I'm going to cover 2 ways to make your wife desire more sex. The first one is relationship. Women are wired for relationship, and so you need to cultivate and nurture the relationship with your wife in order for her to be more open to the sexual connection in your marriage. So one way to think about it is women need to be emotionally bare before they can become physically bare. And this includes multiple things. One thing it includes is emotional intimacy. And emotional intimacy is sharing your inner world. What's really going on for you? What's your highs? What's your lows? What are you really feeling? What are you really thinking? Most females desire that level of connection. They want to not only share their inner world with you, but they want to hear yours. And when that's happening on a regular basis, that makes them feel close to you. And I recommend a head-heart technique, which is one of the tools that I teach about. And that's where you share your head, which is your agenda, and you share your heart, which is mad, sad, glad, or fear, and why. And sharing that head-heart twice a day, like 2 bookends on a bookshelf, is a great way to cultivate that emotional intimacy. And if you're not very good at that, you're not quite sure how to do that, or you're not quite sure what you're even feeling, you may need to practice journaling every day, even for 5 minutes. What am I feeling? Is it mad, sad, glad, or fear, and why? The more you journal about that and explore your inner world, the more connections you'll start to make, and then the more you'll have to share. This emotional intimacy also includes when your wife is venting to you about stress in her life, do not fix it. Do not correct it. Do not try to curb it. Instead, you want to empathize with it. And empathy statements are really short, simple phrases that make her feel like you have her back. So one easy phrase for empathy is, that sucks. Or, that sounds really frustrating. Or, no wonder you feel that way. Or, I can see how you would feel stressed because of blank. Or I can see how you would feel mad because of blank. Or that makes sense that you feel upset because of this. So those are all empathy statements. So the more you respond with empathy, the more it's going to make your wife feel close with you and connected. The other things with the relationship you want to focus on is quality time. Make sure you're carving out time from your busy life, tech-free, to connect with your wife and have that quality time. The other piece under relationship is affection. Most females desire affection, non-sexual touch, where there's no strings attached. If you only touch your wife when you want sex, she's going to associate touch with sex and resent your touch. So you have to flood her with affection, non-sexual touch. Learn how she likes to be touched. Maybe she likes her hair stroked or her arm lightly tickled or whatever it is, but you have to learn how to touch her. Another thing under the affection realm is cuddling. Try to get into the habit every night before you go to bed just to cuddle for 5 minutes. where you just hold each other close. That releases oxytocin, which is the bonding chemical. So when there's skin-on-skin contact, that's going to make your wife feel more close with you, and she needs to feel close emotionally and through affection before the door starts to swing open to her sexual side. So relationship is a big factor. You have to be nurturing if you want your wife to be more open to sex. The second piece you need to be nurturing or honing and improving on is technique. So the technique side, in a nutshell, you need to learn how to become more clitoral focused rather than penetration focused. And there's lots of reasons for that. One of the main reasons is majority of females, once intercourse begins, their pleasure decreases because there's not enough clitoral stimulation. And as few as a third or less women do not orgasm through intercourse because of what I just said, because there's not enough clitoral stimulation. But that's usually what happens. In married life, usually the husband will initiate sex, and before you know it, there's intercourse, and then the man is finished, and the woman has not orgasmed, and it was not a pleasurable experience for her. So lo and behold, she starts avoiding sex because she associates it with just pleasure for her husband. So there needs to be a paradigm shift where the focus needs to become about the clitoral stimulation, not penetration. Clitoral stimulation needs to be primary and first. Penetration needs to be last. And so in this way, you're serving your wife first. You're thinking about her experience first. You're thinking about what would be a pleasurable sexual encounter for her first and foremost, and what you desire takes a back seat. Because ultimately, you want your wife to enjoy the sexual encounter. You want her to look forward to the sexual encounter. You want her to derive pleasure from the sexual encounter. Therefore, you need to put your needs of penetration in the back seat. And in the front seat is her. And where the pleasure center is for a woman is on the clitoris, around the clitoris. So I'm going to go through a couple facts with the vulva that a lot of you may not know. And this comes out of research from Ian Kerner in his book, She Comes First. So here's one. The clitoral head has 8,000 nerve fibers, but the head of the penis only has 4,000. So the clitoral head has more nerve fibers than any other part on the human body for men and women. It is the pleasure center of the human body, is the female clitoral head. 8,000 nerve fibers. The clitoris is formed from the same embryonic material as the penis. The clitoris engorges and gets larger when it's aroused, just like the penis. The outer lips of the vulva is made from the same material as the scrotum. The protective hood covering the clitoral head is akin to the foreskin covering the penis. And the vulva has 5 sensory hotspots that most of us don't know anything about. These 5 sensory hotspots include the clitoral shaft, the clitoral head, the frenulum, the perineum, and the clitoral cluster. The clitoral cluster is better known as the G-spot. And the G-spot is behind the vaginal wall where her clitoris is. It's the backside of the clitoris. That's why that area inside the vaginal wall is so pleasurable, because it's the backside of the clitoris. So the entire vulva hotspots are all connected through the clitoral network. But most people approaching sex, most men approaching sex, don't have a clue around the vulva and those 5 hotspots, because instead they're focusing on penetration. Now, a lot of people have concerns with hygiene when it comes to providing oral pleasure to the vulva region. A lot of women will feel self-conscious about odor and taste, and a lot of men will have concerns about the same thing on a female. But it's important for you to know that the vulva is actually cleaner than the mouth. A lot of people don't know that, but the vulva has a self-cleaning system that is so efficient that is actually cleaner hygienically than the human mouth. So to put this all together when it comes to technique, a couple things to consider. This could be a possible scenario. You take a shower together or you take a bath together and you clean one another from head to toe in order to increase hygiene and odor so that you both feel more comfortable and confident going into a sexual encounter. So the first step is you have a bath together or you have a shower together, and then perhaps you light some candles to lower the light so you have less inhibitions. Then perhaps you play some music, and the goal of the music is to lower your inhibitions. So to think about what kind of music would lower my inhibitions. And then as you enter into this erotic time together, think about how to pleasure your wife with touch without touching her vulva for at least 10 to 15 minutes. You want to pleasure her elsewhere. So maybe that's stroking her hair. Maybe that's massaging her shoulders. Maybe that's giving her a foot rub. Maybe that's lightly tickling her stomach and her chest. Whatever that is. But for 10 to 15 minutes, you need to pleasure her body without the vulva, because the vulva and the clitoris is so highly sensitive, you don't want to start there. And a lot of guys either skip it altogether or they start there, and both are a mistake. So you want to provide pleasure throughout your wife's body for at least 10 to 15 minutes before you start focusing on the vulva. And then once you go to the vulva, you want to start on the outside first and slowly work your way in to the clitoral area, because that is the highest sensitive region. And again, you want this to have open feedback. So wives, if you're listening to this, provide feedback to your husbands on what feels good where, what you want more of, what you want less of, how you like to be touched. You need to be communicating this so that it's a pleasurable experience and so that you're training your husband on how to touch you. So those are two things to consider. If you want your wife to desire sex more, you need to first and foremost focus on the relationship. And second of all, you need to focus on your technique to make it more clitoral focused instead of penetration focused. If you enjoyed the episode today, the best way to say thank you is to scroll down and click the 5 stars. The more positive reviews I receive, the higher the podcast will appear in search results so others can find it and receive tools for their marriage. If you believe in this podcast and you want to help me reduce the divorce rate, please consider becoming a monthly supporter by going to patreon.com/marriage steps. That's patreon.com/marriage steps. Depending on your level of support, you'll receive a public thank you on the podcast, a free marriage training module, or 2 free tickets to my next Total Marriage Refresh seminar. The marriage training modules can be found on my website. I'm starting to develop those, and they're an interactive PowerPoint presentation with me talking and training you on different tools to have a successful marriage. If this podcast has made a positive impact on your relationship, I would love to hear from you at info@drwyattfisher.com. And remember, your marriage is alive. If you care for it, it will thrive. And if you don't, it will die. The choice is up to you. Take care.